Hey guys, I am Caleb Giddings, and you're watching another special episode of Gunday Brunch as we work through the post-shot show, post-travel. It's very busy for us, guys. It's very busy for us. So if you are wondering once again why there's a great big empty space to my left, it's because Jack and Keith aren't here, and so I am flying solo. And you know what happens when I fly solo is we talk about revolvers. This episode is brought to you by Taurus USA and Guns.com. Taurus USA, we make the guns. Guns.com, they sell them. All right, so last episode, we talked about the 327 Defender Toro, which is one of my pet projects and a gun that I'm really pleased to have been part of the developmental process on. Now we're going to talk not just about one gun, but about three guns, about a whole lineup of guns, and that is the Taurus Executive Grade series. So some of you may be familiar with this, some of you aren't familiar with the executive grade. We'll talk a little bit about what the executive grade series is first, and then we'll talk about the guns. The executive grade guns, there's three of them right now. There's the original, the 856, then there's the Judge executive grade, and now there's the 605 executive grade. And I've got all three of them here with me. We're going to talk about all three of them. But the idea was to build a gun, and honestly, this isn't throwing shade at Smith & Wesson, but to build a gun that was like the Performance Center guns of yesteryear, where it was a one gunsmith thing. And that's what it is with the executive grade. So in Brazil, there's this room, and in this room are like 5 dudes, and these dudes are building the executive grade guns. And basically one dude gets one whole gun and then hand fits it and builds it and turns that out. That's his product. That's his job. So as you might guess, the production numbers on these are not very high. We don't make a ton of these guns every month. We don't make a ton of these guns every year. They are very much a limited edition, and they are made by, again, one person. So I know that every single executive grade gun that I have, one guy made that gun, and that's pretty awesome. I think that's a really cool ethos for the company, and it's something that's really neat that we can kind of hang our hat on, that we are doing that, and we are doing these, these special, highly finished guns. What do all the executive grade guns have in common? They're hand fitted, they have a hand tuned action, they will all have smooth double action trigger pulls. The ones that have single action mode will have really nice single action triggers. Not that you need that, because what is it? Single action, it's irrelevant for defensive shooting, completely irrelevant, you don't need it, but people want it, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. So anyway, they're all hand-fitted, hand-tuned actions. They all have a polished stainless finish, so they look really nice, and they all come with presentation-grade wood stocks, which I usually rip off and put different grips on because I like different grips on my guns, but we'll talk about that too. But now let's do I was going to say chronology, but I don't think that's the right word. Let's do the executive grade ones in chronological order, starting with the first executive grade, the Taurus 856 executive grade. Now, a couple of things that I want to note right off the bat. In 2 of these guns today, I'm using these new dry fire discs from Zeta 6. What these do is they allow a clear visual reference that the cylinder is blocked so that you can't put any live ammunition in there. They make the gun safe to dry fire. Basically, they're pretty awesome. I've been really happy with them. I'm testing these out, and you can definitely expect to see these in my classes this year if you're taking any revolver classes from me. So let's talk about the 856 executive grade. Now, a couple of things on my gun. I have changed the grips. I have the Pachmayr wood stocks on here. I think that these look great. These look fantastic. Honestly, they look beautiful on the gun. They complement the overall appearance of the gun while also doing the thing that I want them to do, which is be long from the toe to the heel. So I want them long front to back, not wide, because that long front to backness is what allows me to grip the revolver in the unusual way that I grip it. Now, we're not here to talk about my grip. We're here to talk about the executive grade. So I have a special history with the 856 executive grade because 4 years ago, before I ever got hired by Taurus, this was one of the guns that they brought me in to consult on the development of. They're like, hey, we want to make a super cool revolver. Let's bring in Caleb and a couple other guys to tell us what they want in a super cool revolver. And we said we want a 6-shot, 3-inch, 38 special with a bobbed hammer, and a good trigger, and then that's what they made. That's the gun. It's a 6-shot, 3-inch, 38 special with a bobbed hammer and a good trigger. The trigger in this gun is still stock. I haven't changed anything around in this, and it has got a phenomenal trigger pull. This gun itself has been shot 1,333 times as of today, and it's probably been dry fired triple or quintuple that. I don't know. I don't keep track of dry fire trigger presses, but I'm about to start thanks to the Live Fire app, but that's a different thing. The one thing on this gun that I don't like that I changed is I didn't change it. So the front sight on this is a black ramp, and I painted it orange so I could see the damn thing when I'm shooting it because I need that contrast. So that's the first one. That's the 856 executive grade. Again, 6-shot, 38 special, pretty much, your meat and potatoes. This is the gun that you want. It fits any holster for a 3-inch 856. I have mine in a Filster City Special. I've carried this gun to the point that I've had to scrub surface rust off of that beautiful stainless finish because, as you know, if you've been following me for some time, I have toxic acid skin, and my sweat ruins guns. So, moving on, what was the next gun that we did in the executive grade series? Well, the best-selling revolver that we make, the one that's constantly on back order, constantly in demand, is the Judge. So we did the Judge executive grade. And I was initially not excited about this because even though I worked for Taurus, I hadn't really opened my mind about the Judge. This is the gun that opened my mind about the Judge because no matter anything else that this gun does, yes, it shoots 410 shot shells, but you know what else it does? If I take 5 45 Colt rounds and I stick them in these cylinders and I line up the sights and I press the beautiful double action trigger 5 times, this will shoot a 3-inch group at 25 yards, whatever. It will do the thing that I want to do, and it will park that bullet exactly where I want it to go. And it's because it has an absolutely phenomenal DA trigger. The DA trigger in this is sub 9 pounds from the factory, and it cracks all primers. It's fantastic. The SA trigger is pretty good too. Not that, again, that's relevant, but if you're into that sort of thing, it's got one. This gun, I did rip the presentation grade wood stocks off, and I went with a Hogue rubber wraparound grip that gives me a little bit better recoil control. I, of course, then wrapped it in goon tape because a lot of my grips are wrapped in goon tape. But what I really like about this is I've carried this gun in a chest bag when I've been mountain biking. I've carried this gun in a prototype. We ended up not going into production with this holster, so I have a Galco, I think this is called the Phoenix. They did this prototype for me because we were thinking about ordering like 100 of them for the web store. We ended up not going into production with it because I felt like the price point might have been a little bit aggressive for what Judge owners are willing to pay, which is a shame because it is beautiful. I love this holster. It's great. But that's not the point. So, the Judge. What changes did we make from the 856 to the Judge? Well, one of the critiques we got about the first executive grade, the 856 executive grade, was the front sight. That black ramp front sight's not great. So what can we do to change it up? Well, on the Judge, we invented, I hate the whole never been done before, but this has never been done before. We did a brass rod front sight. So instead of a brass bead, which you've probably seen before on revolvers, this is like an open style fiber optic sight, but instead of a fiber, we have a brass rod in here. And that is, it's almost indestructible, right? I've banged this on countertops and dropped it and done all sorts of other fun stuff with it. And the sight it's hard to kill. You're gonna knock it out of the dovetail before you break that brass rod. And I think that's a really clever, very thoughtful thing that we've done to make the gun have a little bit better sight picture than the 856 executive grade. Other than that, it's a fairly standard Judge. It has a 2.5-inch chamber, so don't put your 3-inch shells in here. Just put 2.5s in here. It has I'm not kidding when I say this. I have pulled basically every double action trigger on earth, right? From Manurin MR73s to Colt Pythons to Quartz and everything in between. This gun, Daryl Bolke said that this gun had such a good double action trigger, it pissed him off that it wasn't just a 45 Colt, which coming from Daryl is a hell of a compliment. The factory DA trigger on this is the best one I've ever pulled on anything other than a Korth, right? The Korth guns, that gun costs $4,000 for the entry level model, whatever. So I would expect it to have a really good trigger. This has an MSRP of under $1,000, and it has what is without doubt one of the best factory DA triggers I've ever pulled. I think it's better than let me think about this. What is it better than that's sort of in the same weight class? It's better than anything from Smith, without a doubt. Any factory Smith triggers. It's better than any factory Ruger triggers. You could make an argument that the Python is on par with it. I loved the Python trigger when I shot one all those years ago. So you could make the argument that the Python trigger is as good as it. I think this is better. But yeah, I guess you could make a case for the Python trigger being better. But I think that this trigger in the Judge Executive Grade is, again, the best mass-produced factory DA trigger out there. It's phenomenal. I love it. It's great. I have carried this gun. I've shot a ton of 45 Colt through this gun. I've even shot some 410 rounds through it, even though I don't particularly have a use case for that. For me, this gun is a 5-shot medium framed snub nose 45 Colt, right? And to kind of put it in perspective, people think the Judge is super big, but here I have a medium frame Taurus 82. This gun is about the same size as an L frame, all right? It has a 4-inch barrel. If I put the Judge right next to it and I match them up barrel to barrel, they're the same size. They're exactly the same size. So the Judge isn't really that big of a gun. It has weird proportions because the cylinder is so long. But a Judge with a 2.5-inch cylinder Judge with a 3-inch barrel is the same size as an L frame or a Ruger GP100. And if you don't think that that's a carryable gun, I can't fix that for you. It is a carryable gun, and this gun is a 5-shot double action 45 Colt launcher, and I love it for that. I might, if I'm around, I'm going to take this gun to friggin' the Revolver Roundup next year, and I'm going to teach a block on the Judge. It's going to be fantastic. But anyway, this was the second executive grade that we did. And again, I made some changes to mine, mostly on the stocks, because those wood stocks were not my jam. And we'll talk about those wood stocks in a minute. So we launched the first executive grade in 2021. We launched the second one in, am I getting this out of order? 2020, was it 2021 or 2022? When did I get hired? I got hired in 2022. The gun had already been launched. So we launched it in 2022 as the first executive grade. The second one, the Judge, we launched in 23. And then this year, in 2024, we launched the latest addition to the executive grade, the 605. Now, one of the big changes from the 856 and the Judge to the 605 is we got a new case for it. So the previous versions had come in a Pelican case, which was beautiful, and I loved that Pelican case. We went with a Nanook case for the 605, and it's got one little touch that I like. And if you're listening to the audio, you can't see this, but there is an inlay on the case that says Taurus Executive Grade, and then protected by Nanook. And it's really dope, and I love that. I love this Nanook case. I actually really like Nanook cases in general. My travel case is a Nanook case, and I've been using it for forever. So, 605. Why the 605? You guys might want to know, what does the 605 do that the other ones don't? Well, the 605, which I have another one of those sweet dry fire discs in, is really an answer to customer feedback from the 856. So the majority of the feedback we got on the 856 executive grade was we want a 357 Magnum and we want it to have a hammer spur. And we said, okay, here. And thus is born the 605 executive grade. It is a 5-shot 357 Magnum. It is double action with a single action function. Man, that single action's good. It's a shame single action is pointless. That's a really good single action trigger pull. What is that, like? Probably about 2.5 pounds, maybe a little bit more. Where's my trigger pull gauge? I was looking for my trigger pull gauge yesterday and I couldn't find it because I'm a hot mess and my office is currently a complete disaster. Like if you're watching this, you can sort of see my workbench behind me and it's just covered in shit. Anyway, so 856, 605 Judge, and now the 605. Why the 605? Again, a response to customer feedback. They said they wanted a 357 Magnum, and they said they wanted to be able to shoot it in single action. So we said, all right, we'll give the people the thing that they want, because that's kind of our vibe at Taurus, is we are very, very responsive to our customers and giving them the things that they want. Here's my trigger pull gauge. Hey, let's find out how much that single action trigger is, all right? Let's roll the DA trigger too, because I know how much the triggers are on my other guns, but we're gonna have some fun with this one and we're gonna check things out and see what these trigger pulls are like. All right, so I've got the Lyman digital trigger gauge. We're gonna clear, ready, get that on there, and we're gonna just roll. All right, I have a reading of 11 pounds, 15 ounces. I'm going to take that again and roll. And one more run. All right, now we're going to average those. The average is 11 pounds, 13 ounces, which is, I'd say that's sub 12, and that's about right. We set the 605 triggers always to be heavier than the 856 triggers because we have to crack Magnum primers. So if you want a really good trigger pull, get an 856. If you want to crack Magnum primers, you need a 605. All right, now let's clear that out and we'll do the pointless single action. About 4. Okay, hang on, I didn't try this again. I got 2 wildly different readings. Let's clear that out, start again. 2.2. 1 pound, 15 ounces. I know that's not. All right, we're gonna try one more. All right, so average 2 pounds, 1.7 ounces for the SA trigger pull, which is pretty great. Again, if you're into that sort of thing. I'm not. I would much prefer this. And the nice thing about that double action trigger pull is it is very smooth. It doesn't stack up at any point in the trigger pull, just like all of the other executive grade triggers. So let's talk about the 605 for a little bit and how it is a response to, again, customer feedback, right? They said they wanted single action function. They wanted 357, so we did that. We kept the brass rod front sight from the Judge for the 605 because people really seemed to like that. And that's kind of, that's kind of the gun right there. I'm going to talk about the grips now. So these are the same grips on the 605 that you would get on the 856. And here's why I'm not a huge fan of these. So if you look at the shape of this grip, you might be willing to say that it is Python-esque. And I talked about this when I reviewed the 856 on my channel. The shape of the grip is similar to the grip shape of the Python, right? And the grip shape of the Python is designed to place the hammer under your thumb for single action shooting. And I have no evidence of this, but I secretly believe that Colt thinks every gun should be a single action because of their heritage with the Colt SAA. But the Python grips place that hammer really nicely under your thumb for SA shooting. And they also do the same thing that the Colt SAA grips do, where they sort of roll the recoil off. I don't want the recoil to roll off. I want the recoil to come back in a straight line so I can recover the gun and keep it tracking flat to the target, which sort of coincidentally is why I like the grips on the Taurus 82 on like our medium frame guns, because they have almost a little mini beaver tail at the top that helps me actually keep the gun tracking in a straight line. So the only thing I don't like about the executive grade is the grips on the gun. That's it. That's the only thing. Everything else about it I love. That's why I usually change these out for something else. But this one, my 605, I'm actually going to keep stock because I want to use it for a barbecue gun. Although, I think that the Packmeyer grips are also barbecue gun worthy. And if you don't know what a barbecue gun is, it's if you live somewhere where open carry is legal and you're going to a barbecue and it's one of those like, hey, let's look at everybody's cool gun sort of events. This is a real thing, by the way. This is a thing that people do. Then you want to have like a nice like stainless steel revolver and a leather holster with wood grips. And that's what this 605 is going to be for me. It's going to be my barbecue gun. I'll load it up with 5 rounds of Hornady Critical Duty 357 Magnum and hope that I don't have to shoot anybody more than once. But yeah, that is a fairly comprehensive rundown of the executive grade lineup from Taurus USA. If you guys have questions about the executive grade lineup, feel free to hit us up in the comments. You can DM me on Instagram, or just go to taurususa.com for more information on these guns. We will be back next week with another episode of Gunday Brunch. I really hope that Keith and Jack are able to sort of get it together and, we can do like an episode with all 3 of us again. If you want Keith and Jack back, let me know in the comments and we'll try to bring those guys back and do another episode with them. But anyway, that is it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. And go on the Google bots and search for Taurus Handgun Experience and come train with me and Melody Lauer in New Orleans. Thanks for watching.